The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol has shut down pedestrian and vehicular traffic at the largest border checkpoint between San Diego and Tijuana, Mexico. Border Protection has also called in additional personnel due to multiple planned demonstrations on both sides of the border as thousands seek asylum in the U.S. is happening as the incoming Mexican government is now denying reports that it reached a deal with President Trump's administration to keep asylum seekers out of the United States and in Mexico. The pushback coming hours after the Washington Post reported that Mexico had agreed to keep asylum seekers while their applications are being processed in the U.S. The Trump administration says the proposal would double the number of asylum applications processed at the southern border. But the incoming Mexican government says it has not reached any agreement, after all, with Washington on what to do with the growing tide of asylum seekers from Latin America. With me right now is CNN correspondent Rafael Romo. So, Rafael, reportedly there was an agreement, and then the incoming Mexican administration officials say, no, there isn't an agreement. So where are we right now with this?
Yeah, that is the question, right? To begin with, we reached out to the transition team of Mexican President-elect Andrés Manuel López Obrador to ask that very question, and they denied that a deal had been made. The Washington Post reported Saturday there was an agreement that would require migrants to stay in Mexico while their asylum applications are being processed. But in a statement, Olga Sánchez Cordero, who will be Mexico's next Interior Ministry Secretary, I should say, it said that, first of all, there can't be any agreements given that the president-elect won't take office until December 1st. And more importantly, Fred, she said that the incoming Mexican administration does not have any plans to make Mexico a third safe country for migrants. In other words, Sánchez Cordero suggests that the president-elect doesn't want to make Mexico into a sort of a holding territory for immigrants coming to America.
Is it also, I guess it leads the appearances that perhaps somebody may have jumped the gun, I guess, while they're still trying to work out details. But as it pertains to asylum seekers who are in Mexico, the city of Tijuana has been saying that, you know, they have no more resources, you know, to handle the influx of people. And in fact, more recently, they've been saying that they want to ask the UN for some sort of financial help. So is this kind of the same as this proposal of remain in Mexico, or is it something different?
Yes, in reality is that it's kind of happening in practice, and it's a very good point. There are several thousand Central American migrants in Tijuana. In fact, a very chaotic situation unfolded last hour when some of those migrants overpowered Mexican federal police and started running on the international bridge towards this point of entry in San Ysidro. The Tijuana mayor is asking for financial aid from the Mexican federal government and the United Nations to respond to the migrants' needs, a situation that he calls a humanitarian crisis. He simply says, I don't have the money, I don't have the resources, the personnel to tend to these migrants' needs.
And now this breaking news that the border, the busiest, border, port of entry there just south of, San Diego, impacting Tijuana, has been closed, reportedly now. The president potentially living up to this promise. He threatened that he might do that, and now reportedly it is happening. How busy is that port of entry?
It's one of the busiest border crossing points in the entire world. And what happened was that there was a peaceful protest started a few hours ago, and within the last hour, the migrants in the hundreds overpowered the Mexican federal police lines and started running towards the U.S. side, and the decision was made that they needed to cross the bridge, vehicular traffic and also pedestrian traffic at the border. So essentially at this point we're talking about what President Trump said before, shutting down the border if necessary.
All right, Rafael Romo, keep us posted on that. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, let's talk further on this. With me now is Ben Ferguson, a CNN political commentator, and Democratic strategist Dave Jacobson, who is also a CNN political commentator. Thanks to both of you. Appreciate you joining me. All right, so Ben, you first. Is this the president living up to his promise of shutting down the border as we talk about this San Diego, port of entry? Or just south of San
I think
Diego?
it's a security issue. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a security issue. You just heard there how these protesters started rushing our border and overpowered the police in Mexico. The president's smart to do this. I think it's important to make sure that you have a secure border. And when you have something like this happen, the president said, this is my responsibility and my job. I'm going to do it. And I think that's part of the reason why this administration has had very open dialogue with the incoming administration in Mexico and have had these early talks and had these conversations. They wanted to have a strategy day one. I think both sides, Mexicans, President-elect wanted to have a strategy and a working relationship with Donald Trump day one. That's why you've seen some of this information that's been leaked out. But this president's made it clear. He is a deal maker to protect us, and he wants to work a better deal and have a better relationship with Mexico's administration. That's, I think, what you're also seeing in this article, what's been put out there, which I think is smart by both sides. Get on this early, deal with it now.
How do you see this border crossing closure potentially impacting what was reported, that there was this remain in Mexico proposal that Mexico and U.S. have agreed upon, but then now Mexico, the incoming administration says, that's premature, that's not quite what the deal was. How do you see this move as potentially impacting whatever negotiations there may be?
I think if anything, it actually strengthens the idea that we need to do something, because clearly Mexico understands this is not something that they want to see. They don't want to see a large number of people end up in a place like Tijuana where the citizens there are frustrated, the citizens there are protesting, the citizens there are saying this is a drain on our resources, our taxes. We don't know who these people are. We want them to go back to their country of origin. The same things that many Americans are saying. They're experiencing what America's experiencing. So now Mexico is feeling that pressure from their own citizens and their own local law enforcement. Seeing them be overrun only enforces the idea that there must be a strategy that U.S. and Mexico agree on, because this is problematic for Mexico and it's also problematic for this country. So I think it's going to bring this administration and the new administration together even sooner than many probably hope for.
All right. So earlier today, this is how Congressman Elijah Cummings responded to this asylum proposal, arguing that it's against the law.
If the president cuts a deal with Mexico, are you supportive of that?
No. I
Why?
think because that's not the law. They should be allowed to come in, seek asylum. That's the law. And we don't.
Would you support changing the law?
No. I think that we have a system that has worked for a long time. This president has come in, wants to change it. That's up to him. But now the Congress has got to stand up.
So, Dave, how do you see this? Does this set the stage for, another challenge against the president?
I think it does, and I think it's important, Fred, to understand the political context that we're working in this environment. Right now, CBS put out a poll just yesterday showing that Donald Trump has a mere 39% approval rating. That comes on the heels of just 2 weeks ago, Democrats picked up a whopping 39 seats in the House, 7 governorships, and 380 state legislative seats across America. What does that mean? It's hard evidence that Americans want a change. They want a new direction. This scorched earth immigration policy that the president has implemented isn't working. The American people are fed up and they're looking to change course. That's why they sent this resounding victory for Democrats up and down the ballot across the country. What do Americans want? They want a pathway to citizenship for DACA individuals. They want comprehensive immigration reform that's inclusive and compassionate. Do we need to work with the Mexican government to grapple with the caravan issue? Absolutely. But we shouldn't change federal laws. We should have our consistent asylum process work. These folks should be able to come in here.
Before a new Congress convenes, is this the president saying, I'm going to get this done, this was my campaign promise, and, deal with it on the other side, but this is the way it's going to be for now? Dave?
I don't think he has the executive authority to do that, just like he thought he had the executive authority to end birthright citizenship, which Paul Ryan, graciously came out and said that you can't change the 14th Amendment, Mr. President, with an executive order. This is an overreach by the president, and I think he needs to work with the incoming Congress to cut a comprehensive immigration reform that's compassionate and inclusive and reflective of our American values.